And I'm going to tell you about Roberta and Ian at the same time. They have a company called Void Studios. They're architects and researchers, organization formed in 2022 as a response to climate emergency challenges. One of their focuses is on indigenous wisdom and resilience, specifically here in times of climate crisis. Underpinning their work is a phrase, every place starts with the potential for regenerative design. And I met Roberta with Minari while we were in the sacred headwaters of the Amazon in this little tiny village. And somehow we reconnected about 5 months ago and said, hey, let's work together. So please help me welcome Roberta and Ian. Go for it. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Sorry?
I mentioned the topic. Go for it.
Oh, that's all right. You got the slides on. Perfect. Hello, everyone. I'd like to begin by expanding on gratitude. And I would like to take a moment and thank all who came before me. And also all the speakers who were here yesterday and today and sharing their wisdom and sharing their knowledge with us and expanding on abundance. I would also like to thank Greg and his team for putting all this together. And also I'd like to thank the community here for welcoming us in the intimacy of your community and considering us an ally in rebuilding after disaster. So I did have a little bit of introduction, so I'm going to keep it very short. So we are Void Studios. We are a research-led architectural practice in the UK, and we work with communities around the world because we believe that meaningful change starts from the heart of our cities, which is our communities. I lead the research studio, and my expertise is cultural preservation and regenerative design and practices. I work with indigenous communities to support indigenous-led projects and initiatives. And through our work and commitment to education, we bridge indigenous wisdom and practices within the realm of architecture. Joining us online, Ian Sanders, he is in charge of our architectural studio. With 30 plus years of experience in practice, Ian brings our projects to life. His commitment to regeneration has led him to take a big leap of faith. He quit his job, his director position at a company in London, and decided to utilize his experience, knowledge, and connections to live on the right side of history. Yesterday we talked about what do we learn from indigenous communities, and as Greg just mentioned and prompted me, in this presentation we will be discussing principles in creating thriving communities and also leaving a healthy legacy for our future generations. So the questions that will lead our discussion today are, what would the community look like if we adopt principles of indigeneity? And what if indigenous wisdom isn't ancient history, but the blueprint of our urban future?
Sorry, Ian, you might have to unmute yourself if you can hear me.
Which we can't hear. Okay, we can hear you now, Ian.
Thank you. Okay, so as an architect and urban designer, one of the things that's interesting about the situation in LA is that it's really quite unique. And if we think about traditionally, cities evolve very slowly over decades and maybe even centuries, and they have to do that because they have to function as plan changes take place. And the fires in LA, whilst obviously devastating for people that have been involved, do present a unique opportunity to perhaps reset and force a radical rethink about the way we plan cities. And that's really rare in most cases.
So before I begin revisiting the principles that were mentioned yesterday, I would like to take a moment and actually define what is indigenous. What does the term indigenous means? So indigenous means native of the land, holding traditions and practices that aligned with natural systems, with natural life systems, and living in symbiosis with their local ecosystem. What does that tell us about us living in our cities? So I have summarized what I've observed and I've experienced living in indigenous communities, living with Manari Ushigwa, who is my mentor, and I'm so grateful for welcoming me into the intimacy of his own family and sharing this wisdom and these practices with me. So living with the Saparas, working with the Ma community in Tanzania and the Maasai and Kenya, or the Kasi community in northern India. And although there are many things that I can expand upon on what are the lessons and the knowledge that we take from these communities, I'd like to bring it back to 5 key principles. Respect for biodiversity. What it actually means is recognizing the diversity of species and expanding our awareness from ownership to land stewardship, from exploitation to nurturing. Resource management. Now, indigenous communities, they are incredible at resource management because they know what to take, from where to take, and how much to allow it to regenerate. So, what I was really touched upon, what you were mentioning, Florina, about the land, I would like to expand onto that and to add that the land remembers everything. And we don't rebuild on the land, but we rebuild with the land. And that creates a relationship approach to all of our resources and our ecosystem. Holistic outlook. Holistic outlook refers to interconnectedness of all elements of an ecosystem. It's about fostering belonging, creating trust, and creating and allowing connection to happen. It's looking at how things communicate and how we design and how can we design a feedback loop. It's about communication. Intergenerational transmission. Now, this is something that I really want to spend a moment on. It's about valuing the diversity of every age group. It's the awareness that the wisdom comes from all elements of life, regardless of age. Now, in indigenous communities, an elder is not the oldest member of the community. Not in all cases, but it translates to an elder is a wisdom holder. Think of Greta Thunberg. Reevaluating wealth means shifting from individual to communal wealth.
So we're going to take those points now and just sort of run through some examples and ways that these ideas can be implemented into design. And I think the first one, respect for biodiversity, obviously the first part is inviting nature as a collaborator and allowing the land to lead the design. And what that means is understanding the qualities of the land and the particulars and context driven. It's not, no two sites are the same. And so you have to understand a lot about it. So, we start with topography. What is the topography of the land and what can we learn from that? What does it tell us? And, in the case of the Palisades in Altadena, we know that there is sort of mountains behind the area. There are streams, there's water, and what can we do with that? Well, maybe we can collect some of that water and we can make attenuation ponds where we can create wetlands that would help to, slow the stem of water into the drains, but also create a wonderful haven for biodiversity. So creating these sort of man-made features gives us a chance to integrate nature into the design of a city. We can also look at using fire-adapted native plants. We know that there are plants that regenerate very quickly after fire. We can use those, and we can use traditional knowledge to understand which are the best plants to use. Terraces that can be used to slow water and reduce erosion. We can use cisterns to capture water. Blue-green corridors, what does that mean? It's essentially capitalizing on that water to create thriving green environments that will allow us to be able to create these buffer zones. So, fire is likely to happen again. Let's create buffer zones using landscaping to protect people and residents. Sponge city, what's a sponge city? Well, a sponge city is an urban design concept that mimics the natural properties of a sponge by absorbing, storing, purifying rainwater rather than letting it run away into the drains. And that can be in the form of rainwater harvesting, blue-green roofs, which some of you may have heard of, where you capture the water onto the roof, and it slows that sort of flow down. You can capture the water, use it for grey water systems, for flushing and so on.
And when we're talking about the last point there about permaculture, we're thinking about utilizing, edible landscapes also to create this buffer zone and defensive spaces. And we can expand more onto this after this conversation. Now, resource management. So the key in understanding what this aspect is to acknowledge that there is a finite amount of resources available. And indigenous knowledge brings awareness to the local ecosystem to make the most of what you have, and most importantly, knowing when to stop, knowing when to avoid waste and to allow regrowth.
So, in our turning to what practical implications of that sort of concept, what we would start looking at is what are the resources available, and then focusing obviously on building and architecture. Soil. So Roberta mentioned the work that we're doing in Kenya. One of our projects there, we're actually using rammed earth structures for a building. And the beauty of this is that it literally comes from the ground. I mean, we talk about putting architecture into its setting, into its landscape. You can't get much more literal than taking the ground and putting it into a building and built form. And soil and rammed earth, there are so many wonderful advantages of using this, sort of added benefits that it's low embodied energy. So embodied energy is the energy that it takes to create the material. So the less that you have to transport a material, typically the lower embodied energy you'll have. So this is a wonderful material to use, and obviously there's abundance of it. Timber, and I think people might be scared about using timber. It is available. It can be grown. It's a great renewable source. And it can be used, and as long as it's used properly, and as long as it's encapsulated between non-combustible materials, timber can be used, and it's used all over Europe, and there are many examples of that. We have solar. Obviously, you have a lot of sun, and this is something that can be used for solar energy, but also for heating and cooling buildings. We talked about water already, blue-green infrastructure, wind. When it's not sunny, the wind is also a wonderful way of getting natural ventilation, passive cooling, and so on. And community, of course, this is the most resilient resource of all. And as an example, we're all here together from local and internationals, all coming together to talk about things. So I think just looking at just the final point on this is, I think you can see that there's a sort of financial and ethical logic to embedding buildings into their local ecosystem, using locally sourced materials wherever possible.